Hello and welcome, everyone. Today is Thursday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. We're here with Kirk Spond, Tommy Haas, and Greg Hill. We're just going to give folks a minute to trickle in here on the webinar. It usually takes about a minute or so. If anyone has any questions at this time, feel free to utilize the Q&A. Looks like we got some people coming in, so we'll give them a minute. Kirk, Tommy, Greg, how's everyone doing tonight?
Really good, thanks.
Well, thanks. How are you?
Great, thanks.
We are in all over the country right now. I think Tommy and I are in Los Angeles. Greg's in Florida. Ethan, you are in DC.
Right.
Jonathan, I think, is in Ohio. So we're yeah.
All right, so it looks like we can go ahead and get started. So without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Kirk Spond, founder and president of ICL Academy. He is a little familiar with Tommy Haas and the tennis world in general. We're excited to be doing this in partnership with Tommy, in partnership with Universal Tennis Rating, UTR. And without any further ado, Kirk, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ethan. So this is really kind of a special for me because I've had the privilege of knowing Tommy for coming up on 2 decades now, and the conversations that we've had have been unbelievable, really about what it takes, sort of talking about when you're passionate about a sport like tennis and what it takes to really kind of climb the ladder as a junior player, enter the pros, and how it really becomes sort of a life's calling. And it's been sort of really incredible to over the years share some big highlights really of Tommy's career with him on the court, off the court, and always talking about a passion for helping others and passing it on to the next generation. And it's really even more of an honor because when you talk about early days, and this webinar is kind of focused on education and really the process, and you'll hear a lot about 6 Ps, to also have Tommy's juniors and in the pros doubles partner and best friend who actually was with Tommy on the journey. I joined in as a fan and a friend later in life. Greg Hill, who's here, has been sort of living with Tommy for many years, has gone on to the business world to do great things. I don't think I need too much of an introduction. Many of you here are tennis players, so you know Tommy's accolades, got up to as high as number 2 in the world and really climbed the professional ladder with a lot of speed, but people don't realize the process that goes into that. And that's what we're going to be learning today. We're going to be talking about sort of how you take a passion and create purpose and then a process to that. It's pretty exciting notables. Tommy's beaten, I believe it's, and you can correct me, Tommy, there's a silver medal in there. In the Olympics, there's also, I think, you've beaten 10 former number 1 in the world players, 10 or 11. I forget the numbers, a lot of them. I've seen him live beating Novak. The last big match win on tour was against a guy named Roger Federer that some of you also might know. And, really just excited to have him. So I think we're going to kind of just dig in, and you can ask questions as you see here. But really the most important thing is to ask the questions, to understand where we're going with ICL Academy tennis, what the partnerships look like, and how we can help youth. So I think, Tommy, let's go back a ways. Let's start from the beginning and talk about your passion for tennis, where it came from. How did it come about?
Yeah, first of all, hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And also a quick shout out to you, Kirk. I think, I speak on behalf of Greggy and I as well. If we say that, you obviously have an amazing background with the whole education and your family size, running a Dwight school in New York City, and, started Dwight Global, which is another online school. And, having discussed with you many, many times how important education is. And you also having a great background and playing much tennis yourself, and junior tennis and collegiate tennis. And understanding also, how hard it is or what it takes, both in a way of, how to go after your passion, as tennis was your big passion as well, but coming from a background from your family, which is education. And so, you had sort of the support structure, making sure that you will get your education. And we're just proud of you for creating this new platform, the ICL Academy online school. Greggy and I, which will be discussed a little bit more later in detail, will tell you some amazing stories. When we first met each other back when I was about 12 years old, when I came to the Preparatory Tennis Academy in Florida, leaving basically my home in Germany and my family behind, and trying to learn another language first before even understanding what the teachers were talking about. So I think there's a lot of synergies here from the three of us, and I think we are all very, very I can say that out loud, passionate people wanting to give back. And we all find ourselves very blessed in the situations that we find ourselves in currently. And we all have kids, and we want to leave this place in a better world and help out as much as we can. So congrats on that, Kirk. But to get back to your first question, how I got started to tennis was quite interesting. My dad actually became a tennis teacher because he had one of his good friends that basically all of a sudden made a pretty good living. And he found out that he was teaching tennis. And my dad said, well, if you can teach tennis, that's certainly something that I can do. My dad never really had much of interest of tennis until that point. He was a judo master, did judo for a very, very long time, had, his black belts and did some regional good things with his team. And that's sort of what he wanted to put in me in the early years. I started going to judo classes at age 2.5, 3 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I never really had a good time. But in order for me to spend a lot of time with my dad, which, the boys usually want to hang out with the dad a little bit more, I had to go to the tennis club. But my dad was teaching most of the time, so he didn't really have that much time for me, and decided to, put a little wooden racket in my hands, give me a few balls, and says, over there is a tennis wall. Why don't you go over there and entertain yourself? So that's what I did for many weeks, months, until somebody paid attention to the fact that I seemed like I knew what I was doing. I was pretty talented. And from that on, my dad sort of paid a little bit more attention to it. I started, joining him in in some of the tennis classes with other students that were a little bit older than me. And I really had good liking to it. And I could sense from a young age that a lot of the times when adults would sort of walk by and they would see me play at age 4 or 5, they would say, wow, you are really good. And, like compliments in life, that sort of stuck with me. And I felt like every time somebody would see me play, they would sort of have this wow, this kid's this fun. Let me watch him play for a little bit. And, I just felt something special from these young moments on. It obviously helped quite a bit when a guy named Boris Becker, which some of you might know and remember, won Wimbledon in 1985. Was basically on live TV in Germany, and I remember watching all the matches, following it on TV. And when he won Wimbledon, something struck me. It was like, seeing him hold up the trophy on this amazing grass court stadium. It was just like this golden trophy. It was like, wow. And I knew from that day on, I said to my dad, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to become, tennis professional.
I love that. And I think while we have you here, I mean, Greg as well, I'll kind of share for the people here. Greg had one of the most, amazing junior careers, as I said, also sort of different paths. And we'll learn a little bit more about that and why it's actually so exciting to have Tommy and Greg here, because it really represents the ethos of what ICL Academy tennis, will focus on. It's not about whether you become number 1 in the world or 2 in the world. It's what it builds, the friendships, the path that it goes on. And you guys have that together, which is really special. For those who are here as well, we're, a lot of people know about ICL, that we have these 6 Ps, talking about a long time. So we covered passion, and to go over them, we're going to talk about passion to purpose. And there's a big difference in falling in love with tennis than actually deciding that that's the path that you're going to do. And I want to share with Greggy, Greg, was there a time that, like Tommy, that sort of clicked in you? Because you both started incredibly young and were incredibly impressive junior players, but what was that moment for you as well that you kind of remember? You were like, all right, I'm passionate about tennis, but I want to be a professional tennis player.
Sure. Well, thank you, Kirk. That's a great update from Tommy. I've heard that story a few times, but it's better and better every time I hear it from him. I guess I was probably so my dad was an athlete, a very good athlete, set a bunch of records in high school, and he wanted me to play. He wanted me to play basketball. That was his big sport. And I remember playing and not, like Tommy said, not really enjoying it. But I needed to be around my father. It was the only time I could because he was working so much. And I think my mom started putting me in different classes, different sports. And one of the sports was tennis. And it was with some kids in school. And I remember going out there and everybody was hitting the ball around and, just having fun. But for something clicked. I ended up staying later that day and my mom had a hard time taking me off the court. So that was kind of my first
following. We've had a hard time getting you off the court ever since.
Yeah, exactly. And from there, to be honest, my parents didn't come from a tennis background. My dad understood sports, but he was really just trying to figure it out with me. And I just kept pushing. And I just kept trying to find a tennis court. And I had this feeling inside of me, like Tommy said, when people would come by, they would just you could feel that they were like, huh, like that's impressive. And it took me a while to really figure out my skills and they were unique. And it really took Nick Bollettieri to finally say, hey, you have something special, but it took a lot of years. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that I was on the right path. Even though my dad kept trying to pull me back into other sports, which are more, unique in the area. Tennis was not a sport in my area where I was from. So hence why I had to meet Tommy in Bradenton, Florida, many years later.
And that's such an interesting sort of coalition. I think that a lot of people here, when you're on this webinar, about tennis, you love tennis. Many people probably followed Tommy's career, but I think a lot of the input is really how this all happened. And at ICL, that's that passion, the purpose. And then once you have that, you need a process. And I think the process of deciding that when you have talent and then actually taking it from a talented person to a, as everyone here knows, the ranking systems. I mean, the difference between, a 5 UTR and a 13 to get to those levels becomes a big process. Can you share a little bit about your process, because that's what ended up making you guys come together?
Yeah, so my process was obviously very similar. My dad had to spend a lot of time on the tennis court to make a living. I had an older sister and a younger sister. My older sister, Sabine, she was also a very, very good tennis player, a very, very good junior player. So she was always sort of the benchmark for me at a young age, trying to beat her in a set. She obviously had 3 years more than me, so that's a big difference when you're 6, 7, 8 years old going up against a 10, 11, 12-year-old. And that was obviously the beginning of me really acting up and bringing that home and being so competitive, where I couldn't eat sometimes or I couldn't sleep and bear with the fact that the person that I just lost to is sleeping in the same house as me. And I think that's sort of like where my dad started to really feel like, okay, this kid really is crazy about tennis. I mean, I wrote a note that I still have today when I was 7 years old that I do not understand why I actually have to go to school, because I already said what I want to become and what I want to do. And why do I have to go to school? That's basically a waste of time in my eyes at that time, because I could be using that time wisely on a tennis court, really, working on my craft. This note, I mean, it's very special. I mean, all the writing errors that I made and, putting it together, but, basically making sure that my parents see that I'm serious. And
so
I think
you were asking, I'm trying to understand, sorry, you were asking to go to ICL Academy when you were 7. You wanted this to happen. So I apologize. It took 35 years more. So that's on me. I apologize.
If it would have been around at that time, you're damn right. That's what I would have needed for sure. because then I could have used the time much better and, maybe had a better career than I did. Because, as a tennis player, you're always very critical of yourself and you look back what I could have done better. Even though, you learn at times to say, what, I did pretty good and I'm happy with what I have accomplished. But having said that, going back to the process, so, my dad had to sort of, find the time during the day to also teach me, since he was sort of my coach, my teacher, my mentor. Also a pretty straightforward guy, straight shooter, an alpha male. There was not many options that you had. Sometimes when he wanted it his way, you better oblige, otherwise the ball could come back towards you a little bit quicker than usual. So you always had to be ready, always on your tiptoes. But you looked at sort of the federation, and at that time when I grew up and I was born in Hamburg, Germany, the federation in Hamburg, they didn't really develop that many good players. The best players from Germany at the time were always developed in Bavaria. So having my dad now sort of convinced that this is the path that I want to go, Boris Becker exploding with tennis, winning Wimbledon, he started to look into the situation and seeing if we can move south towards Munich, and if he could find a club to train, to teach there, to continue to, in order to give my sister and I a better, better surroundings, better competition, which is obviously very crucial, as you all know. You always got to find to compete. I mean, as much as an importance it is to keep practicing, to go through your routines, to keep working on technique, keep working on getting better. It is also very, very important to learn how to compete at the young age and also see where you are at in your region. If it's in Florida and Texas, California, wherever it may be. It's the same in Germany. You have your different regions. Where are you in the north of Germany, south of Germany, or in general in all of Germany, which you play all of these tournaments. So while I was the best player in Hamburg in the northern part of Germany, we went south, and it didn't take long that I was dominating there as well. And then obviously at some point was the German champion under 12s. Looking for that. So we made a big move into that region in Bavaria. Now in Bavaria, going to school is much stricter than in the northern part of Germany. So you can't really miss any days. So if there were other junior tournaments that you wanted to play under the age of 13, 14, and again, luckily my sister, who was 3 years older, went through that entire process. So you have to deal with the fact of that, and this is no joke, the police would show up and ask why, my older sister was not in school today while she was playing junior tournaments, somewhere in Europe or even within Germany. And, it is not allowed. I mean, there are some strict rules. And I think my dad was always trying to look for the next best possibility in trying to make my dreams come true. And I think that's when he started really looking into, Bollettieri Tennis Academy, because obviously you've heard lots of names in the past that have trained there, that have made it. You've heard about Nick Bollettieri if you're in the tennis world of, producing amazing players. And my dad has been there a few years prior to me getting to Bollettieri's, and back in 1991. So we decided to go on a trip there and see if I like it, and maybe try out a few weeks or months and see if I can, maintain a new life or create a new life for me there, and learn the language and pursue my dreams. And that's literally the first time I met Greggy, who is here with us tonight. And, I never forget it. It was, we were playing on Nick's court, and, I was on the baseline. Greggy was at the net volleying, and I could tell right away, I could see his desire for the game, his competitiveness. It didn't take a long time to see that, that desire and feel that as a player, even at, age 13. And something clicked. Something was pretty special right there and then. And Greggy had a coach at the time. His name was Scott Williams, who happened to live in Austria, Germany for about 3 years teaching there. So he was the only person that I knew right away that actually spoke German, or good enough German, where I could actually try to talk about my feelings, my situation when I needed to know something. Because again, my English was not very good at the time. I mean, it still doesn't sound like it's pretty good with that strong accent, but it's definitely improved since.
I love that. Sorry, my son was just asking me. He heard Uncle Tommy's voice and had to interrupt. But I got to say, it's so interesting how having an older sibling. Same for me. My older brother was a great tennis player. I would go to the court, watch him. You got the best of your sister. How that all starts. And there's so many people on here that are junior players, a lot of kids, I see names on the list of people that, are following that passion, and, just broad questions, how you trained at those young ages, like, the junior circuit, as that process became, what did you find a rhythm, and how did school fit in? And, we've talked a lot about it before. I kind of know some of the answers, but what, in the ideal world, what was your situation like? And then ideally, what would you have liked it to have looked like?
Well, I guess from my point of view, the situation, I didn't know what would have been the ideal situation at the time. I was sort of thrown into a completely different world. I mean, I automatically really liked it because there were other students my age, older than me, way older than me, that came from all around the world pursuing the same goal, and that is trying to be the best tennis players that they can be. Remember back in the day, it was strictly a tennis academy, which was phenomenal. I mean, the competition, like I said, and sort of seeing everybody coming together, doing pretty much everything together. It wasn't that easy. And what I probably should throw in there as well, which made it a bit different, is that 2 years before I actually made the decision to go there full time, I won the German championships under 12 and my older sister under 14. So we won a trip to Bolletari's 2 weeks before Christmas, which is the week before as well, where you play the Orange Bowl, which I didn't play it that year, but my older sister did. But so we arrived together in Florida, in the USA for the first time. And when I arrived there after a long trip, I was separated from my sister because, there's the boys' dormitory and the girls' dormitory. So when I got there at 11 years old, which is a little bit younger even than 12, 13, I was a bit in shock the first couple of hours getting there and experiencing the fact that I was living in a dormitory with about seven other players from South America, living in a bunk bed. It was a completely new a new experience for me. Another small little story. I got a CD player, an early Christmas present from my dad at the time that was very, very expensive. And he gave it to me before that trip. And he says, do me one favor, whatever you do, don't lose the CD player, please. Bring it back home to Germany safe and sound. And literally the first night I went to sleep at the academy, the next morning, somebody has stolen my CD player. And I couldn't communicate. I didn't know how to speak the language. I couldn't even find my sister at the time. You had a cafeteria all of a sudden where everybody had to eat between 7 and 8 a.m. for breakfast, certain time for lunch, certain time for dinner. The food was almost unedible, especially when you're coming from home cooked meals from your mom. So it was a very, very tough time for me. And I didn't really enjoy it that much. And, my sister then left also for the week to go play the Orange Bowl in Miami. So I didn't even see her there for half the time. And the very last day before I was ready to go back to Germany, I got to play in front of Nick with my sister. And Nick said at that time, you get a scholarship right away. Just have your parents send all of your luggage over to Florida. We will set you up. You're good to go here. And I wasn't ready, nowhere near ready. So when I came back about a year and a half, 2 years later with my dad, sort of understanding and seeing actually a little bit of what the academy has to offer, seeing the other players, my age group, seeing Florida, seeing the beaches a little bit for the first time was a much different experience. And again, the key really was also, I felt something special with Greg and his coach Scotty at the time. And I felt like we already became a strong tripod without really having that much time spent together yet. And still to this day, we are that tripod, which is amazing and great. And there's been a lot of stories and ups and downs throughout those years that have been incredible. But that's when I was at the right place.
So I think with that sticking on the process, we talk passion, we got purpose, you have the process. I'll sort of take a break on that and sort of add perspective to it. And the other P of perspective is if you as a 40, I won't give away your full age, but 43-year-old Tommy could go back to that 15-year-old Tommy, knowing what you do now in how you would work out. And Greg, I would kind of ask you the same thing, because I think a little bit of Greg's story, again, it melded in because you guys were two of the top, junior players in the country at this time. And, there are a lot of people on this webinar striving that. Obviously, we're in an interesting time right now because tournaments aren't really being played. So it's a strange year, but training still goes on. So some of the tips that you would think that made a big difference, mentally, physically in your game. I've always seen, the competition, you guys pushing yourselves together, being top, in the country, really in the world as juniors, and just what that was like. And then also both of you, the perspective of what you could change different. If you're talking to the teenage you, because you have a lot of teenagers here on the phone that would be really, or on the line, that would be really interested in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back, the early days when I made the decision to change the process of coming to the United States, to come and join an academy, looking back, I don't think I would have done too many different things really on the tennis front. I mean, you also have to deal with those certain things that you had to deal with. I mean, we didn't have, the knowledge yet about how to work in a fitness sort of, way of treating your body the best way possible. The regimens of, warming up like we do today, the nutrition, the recovery, all of those things were, you learned as you sort of, went your way and something new came about. But I mean, looking at what we have today, I mean, I mean, it's endless of what you can do nowadays. And the same kind of goes back to why we are on here, is same for the education. I mean, we went to Brainton Academy, where most of the students from the academy went to school there. But I think even there, the system didn't really sort of allow us to really excel in education, because sometimes there were weeks where we went Tuesdays and Thursdays, we went to school in the afternoon and didn't get caught. And that would mean that we would sort of like fall behind a little bit. And so I guess the system in a way wasn't set up the right way looking back.
So how about educate? Like, I guess the training was really good. So you had that ability to push each other. What would you have talked about to a younger you in terms of education, which obviously fits into why ICL Academy is so different, and what we're sort of setting out to achieve, and why you're involved with us?
Well, to be completely honest, the younger, if I was talking to my younger self, it'd be tough to talk about education, because there was only one thing on my mind and one thing only. And that was to become a tennis professional, and nothing is going to stop me until I get there. And, again, having these alpha males around me, including my dad, who I didn't see that much anymore since I left to go to Florida. Obviously, every 2 or 3 months, I would either go back to Germany, or they would come visit me in Florida to see what's going on and how am I doing. But Nick Bollettieri also being very charismatic, a strong force, an alpha male, also knowing the plan and really laying it out of what we are going to do in order to become a professional tennis player. So I never really, and that might sound a little arrogant, or it might sound a little strange, but I never had a doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to become a professional tennis player once I'm done with high school. And that's exactly how I planned it out. And even talking at age 16, 17, 18, even hearing sort of, certain situations about going to, play college tennis or something like in that trend. I didn't even know really until later stages what college even is. I didn't know you can play another 4 years collegiate tennis and then maybe go and play pro. I didn't know that existed until really later. And, when I turned pro, and I was like, oh, they played college tennis. Interesting. Because again, the educational side on that side wasn't really helpful in a way where you maybe some players also needed to sort of take the pressure off. Like I thrived more on pressure. I needed more competition. I needed to feel like I always had to prove myself, not always winning, which, again, a lot of times I did, but I didn't always. So, it's like you had to deal with adversity and wins and losses, but the pressure was always important. And I guess some of the players that maybe weren't as talented, or maybe didn't really have the purpose, the passion, the desire to become a professional so bad, they were maybe taught or told, hey, you're going to go to college for a year or two, or the entire 4 years. And then if you want to, maybe at age 22, 23, you will come back and go on tour. Now, back in the day, like in the early mid 90s, that wasn't really something that sounded attractive. Nowadays, right? I mean, you go to college, you get your education. Obviously, that all sounds great. And by the way, if you turn pro at 22, 23, you can play now until you're 37, maybe 40 years old, if you treat your body right with all the things that you are able to have these days. There's no doubt in my mind that all of you guys can do it if you really do it the right way. We have all the tools in the world. It's just how are you going to use them, right? That's really the key. We didn't have so many tools at the time, or didn't really learn how to use them at the time yet. And that's where it comes back to, I guess, why didn't they have a little bit of a better strategy of how to prepare all of the players on the educational side? Because, we did travel a lot in the junior years. We played the Orange Bowls, under 14s, under 16s, under 18s. We did go and play our first satellite in Hawaii for 4 weeks. Imagine you're 15 years old and you go into school, and then all of a sudden you go to Hawaii for 4 weeks. Yeah, you bring all your books, and the book bag weighs 30 pounds, and you're like, yeah, I'll do my work. Come the third day, fourth day of the trip, I mean, you never saw those books again. I don't even know if they made it back to Florida, because and Greggy can definitely attest to that, because
they're in Lanai. I think that they still have your library of books in Lanai waiting for you to finish your work.
I'm ready to go back now and start that work.
Well, I think that's so fascinating. We should probably watch what you say, because I think I saw your father-in-law jump on here. So anything that comes on, so we welcome. We have a lot of students and a David Foster in the house. So David, if I can see you,
wow.
Good to see it. Yeah, we have a.
Hey guys, sounding great. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm gonna mute myself again, but Tommy did a great job. And the book thing, look, I'll just quickly say that I wasn't a great student, so I sympathize, but that's not good advice for the people watching. But I understand.
So coming soon, the David Foster, exactly. The ICL tennis will have ICL music too. Sadly, one thing to learn, that I will caveat this right now: when you have two of the all-time greats in different fields, we at ICL Academy do not promise Grand Slams, Grammy Awards, or anything else, but we sure as hell will give you a great education and try to create character, good human beings, and applying that. So thanks, David, for joining. And Greg, I think you,
Kurt, really quickly, Tommy is one of the all-time greats, and anybody would be lucky to learn from him. And just listen to, hang on every word that he says, because he doesn't use spare words. He's German. He's very by the book, and he'll only tell you what you need to know, not anything extra. So pay attention to every word.
Thank you so much. That's
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Coming from the legend that you are, we can learn a lot from your side. So I appreciate it very much.
Cue in the music. Some of David's classics. I think that all of us trained at some point with some of David's music. I know that when Tommy and I were definitely the Karate Kid, there was a lot of music that we helped shape us. But I think getting back to, that's so interesting about when you're focused, to not really think about distractions. You have one goal in mind. And I think, Greg, it'd be interesting for you, because, for all these that don't know a little bit of the background of Greg, you may not have read about him the same way with Tommy. His last win on tour may not have been against Roger Federer. But Greg was, a great junior, played pro, got injured, and, had a difference in his career, but really had to rebuild it up, and has really made a super impressive name in the business world. And it's amazing how we all came together as totally separate, over our love of tennis. So seeing how your passions can kind of combine. A lot of you on this webinar, are top junior players, and you see some other people as adversarial and sort of pushing you in competition. But, at the end of the day, life is long, and, you build out this resilience, this grit, this perseverance in the process. And if you can, put it together. So Greg, were you in the same in your process? And I think it ties into one of our questions here, which was what did your daily training schedule look like when you were a junior, at that, 14, 15, 16?
Yeah, I'll even go back. I mean, I was 10 when I went to Bollettieri's. I was there for 8 years. I was there almost 2.5 years before Tommy got there. I was truly an academy kid. And I guess when you come from parents that didn't know what to do, never really played tennis, and Nick wanted to keep you, they left me there, right? 1988. So my day was, it was very structured, very focused. I was with Nick pretty much throughout the day, work out in the morning, work out in the afternoon, and then go probably have dinner with him, and then come back and play ping pong and compete with the other academy kids. But I think, to go back to Tommy's point, we were kind of all in we weren't thinking of anything else other than tennis and being a professional tennis player. And I think I want to, something like ICL, I want to, if we would have had that, it would have kind of covered us, you know, protected us and given us the core education structure that we needed, or the core strength, so that if it didn't work out, we were better prepared, you know, going into college or going into a business field. And I can tell you, for me, I had to kind of pivot and figure it out. And going to University of Southern California, I got accepted into Stanford and UCLA and USC because I was the best recruit in the country by far, right? At the time, I was like, the coaches were drooling, like, Greg Hill is going to go to college. And but at the same time, I got to college and everybody there was quite a bit ahead of me, you know, education wise. So it took a lot of my willpower to try to catch up, and I did, because athletes are resilient. I mean, we are very smart. We're quick on our feet, and we have street smarts. But at the same time, these days, you still need the core, mathematics, science, and everything to keep up with the rest of the country. And with ICL, I think you can do that and still have the optionality to be able to play tournaments and go to Hawaii for a few weeks, or play in different regions and live wherever you want to live, which is a dream come true, right? For Tommy and I. I mean, we had to go to the academy. It was either the academy or live in our areas, and who knows if we would have made it. Yeah. So for me, I feel like what ICL can do for athletes is give them an opportunity to be, be more versatile, be a little bit more, nimble in life, and still come out ahead, you know? And I think that's for Tommy and I. You know, we didn't have that option. It was either make it in professional sports or fall on your face. And to be honest, I can say that out of everybody that's come through the academy at my level and Tommy's level, I may be the lone survivor in terms of going at that high of level and being that many accolades for so many years, and being in Nick's book, and being the guy, right, with Tommy, and actually creating a business, 20-year kind of business career. It's very difficult to make that transition. So I think ICL would have been amazing for Tommy and I. And it would have been amazing for everybody in the academy. It would have allowed us to play during the day at different times. They could have done different schedules for everyone, and it would have made it easier on the pros and on Nick. And he could have had academies all over the place. Like we said, 35 years too late, Kirk.
I apologize. That's totally my fault. And David, I apologize to you if I let you down. I wasn't there for you as well.
What I love about Kirk is that Kirk was in my age group. And he was actually a very good player. So for all you on this call, Kirk was a very good player. So it's great that, all my history back in the day, because you watched it and you watched Tommy. So just amazing what you're doing. And I encourage everyone on this call. I mean, if my kids get old enough, they'll be with ICL as well.
So I appreciate that. And I think, Tommy, there are a lot of questions I'm getting, emails. So many people have this drive and this desire. I think we can now talk a little bit about that transition to the pros. And I think sharing some stories, what is it like, when you get to the academy, you're young. And I know, because we're all the same age, I know when I went to the academy and saw a guy like Andre Agassi practicing, at first, if he even looked my way or, nodded, or he wasn't one to give a tip. But I remember when I was there once, Jim Courier gave me one little kind of advice, and it like stuck in my mind. I was like, the number one player in the world just looked at me and gave me advice. What was that like for, both of you and Greg, seeing Andre every day, and then Tommy, you actually like going up and playing against him and beating him? I mean, let's just take a second to sort of walk through some of your memories and greatest hits of that,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And those are obviously very defining moments, like you just mentioned. I remember the first time I was 9 years old when I got to play next to Boris Becker indoors in Hamburg, Germany. He was there at the time because his girlfriend lived in Hamburg, Germany. And I remember him staring over, and my dad, who is again not shy, asked him if he would be able to hit some balls with me. And at that time, he was coached by Bob Brett. And I remember, having Bob Brett look at me and saying, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing it pretty good. So I got to hit, tennis balls at Boris Becker at the age of 9. Then knowing that when I got to the academy, Andre Agassi, Monica Seles, Jim Courier, Pete Sampras, just to name a few of the top players in the world, or trying to get to the top of the world at that time, practicing, a lot of the times at the facility at Bollettieri's was obviously like, okay, where are they? When can I see them play? For all of you out there, Andre Agassi, obviously, being raised and born in Las Vegas, Nevada, would obviously much rather spend much of his time there. And Nick had always to fight many times to try to get him over to Bollettieri's for a week here and there. So when Andre was at the academy, everybody was aware of it. He was the showmaker. He was the guy at the time. I mean, Greggy at the time, I believe, had pretty much the same hairstyle as Andre. So, that was one of his biggest idols, as I remember. And when we had the chance to, and again, I have to applaud Nick for that a lot as well. I mean, Nick took care of some of his top students in a way that, really allowed us to be up close and personal, and see how Andre was training, and seeing his strokes, and seeing what he was thinking about, and seeing sort of the speed and the velocity and the dedication, which he didn't have all the time, but most of the time, especially later in his career. But going out there and then being able to hit some balls with Andre when I was 13, taking a picture with him when I barely made it to his shoulders at the age of 13, special moments. And, seeing Pete Sampras work out in the gym, crossing over the line when he was doing medicine ball workout and sort of staring me down, where I was like, oops, I must have made a mistake. Or seeing, Jim Courier work with an amazing fitness coach, Pat Atchbury, just like an animal. And, it was so uplifting. Monica Seles, I mean, one of the nicest, cleanest ball strikers of all time. You could hear her from a mile away, right? You knew that Monica was practicing, always grunting like crazy. And then also having, Eva Maioli, Anna Kournikova, Martina Hingis, I mean, you name it, Mark Philippoussis. I mean, I remember the day when I was walking to the tennis courts and I was hearing like this thump of just like the ball being crushed. And I was like, what is this noise coming from? And I see a young, 18-year-old Mark Philippoussis just pounding the ball as hard as you can. And so you always had these people coming in and out. So the inspiration of wanting to make it was so high, and it was so incredible. And, Greggy and I had probably one of our best trips. And again, usually during school time, we both went to play junior tournaments. This was, I believe, beginning of April. We left to go to Monte Carlo to have a 10-day training bit with Boris Becker, getting him ready for Monte Carlo. And Boris has never won Monte Carlo. Actually, to this day, he has never won a clay court tournament. So Greggy and I were basically his sparring partners for about 10 days. And so we were put up in Monte Carlo, first time that we are there. I mean, we're thinking we've made it, right? I mean, this is it. We're practicing, we're getting ready, or getting Boris ready for Monte Carlo. We are getting ready for the junior tournaments following the practice sessions with Boris. We have Mike DePalma there, who's a great coach, Nick Bollettieri there. I mean, everything is set up to the key. We're working out with Boris's fitness coach at the time, going for runs in the morning. I mean, you name it, it was done. And we always sort of, celebrated the evening getting room service, which was always strawberries with vanilla ice cream and whipped cream. And Boris always said, whatever you want, just put it on the room. It's on me. And we did it. I mean, it was just like unbelievable. So while we are going to Salsa Maggiore and Prato, all these little cities in Italy playing junior tournaments, we follow Boris's, winning streak in Monte Carlo. He actually made it to the finals and has 2 match points against Thomas Muster that year. And we're thinking, if he wins this title, it's his first clay court title ever. And we had something to do with it because we got him ready. So, having the conversations in between and talking to Nick, and can you believe it? He's in the quarters. Can you believe it? He's in the semis. He's in the final. And when he lost that match in the final, we felt like we lost in a way, because we thought we were the reason why he is going to win his first clay court title. Meanwhile, we are playing, the junior tournaments and, winning quite a few of them in the doubles department, because Greg and I obviously love to play doubles together. We knew each other inside out. We know exactly what one of us is going to do, 2 steps ahead of the way. And, it was, just
more than the Bryan brothers, huh? You guys are in sync like the Bryans.
Yeah, we got the Bryan brothers a few times back in the day. They obviously also, I think, back in the day, looking at it, you obviously try to make it also in singles, and the Bryan brothers did as well. I think a lot of people forget that they played singles for quite some time before they decided that that might not be the route to take, and just really focus on doubles. And hats off to them, because obviously they became the best doubles team ever in the world, and they were the first ones, really, I think, sort of like after the Buddies, to dedicate themselves and to really become the best doubles team ever. I think that was sort of like their mindset once they dedicated themselves to it.
I should take a second because I think David is still with us. Now Tommy finally knows how you and I felt watching Tommy get to like third, fourth round, quarters, semis, Wimbledon. Oh, there's Roger again. I mean, we know it. So I'm glad to hear that you experienced that too, Tommy. That's what it's like to be in your camp. But I think on that point, again, we do have a lot of questions, but I think just those feelings, right? When you felt you made it. Now, how did that then transition in the pros? Because it gets very different, when you actually turn pro and become that, some of your highlights. I mean, I think we're getting like, matches that you won. It's funny. We've had webinars with guys like Bodie Miller, and we always think that winning a gold was that the result or the title is the most important. But we find is that there are certain special moments or matches where you felt you played your all. Is there's, are there things that stuck out to both of you that you remember?
Yeah, and that's sort of like the key, right? Because, I think at the younger ages, 15, 16, 17, 18, a lot of things happen. You go through puberty, you have to work on your body, you're becoming a sort of like a man at some point. You're working out, you're trying to go out there to compete with the men, the best players in the world. And when are you ready for it? Can you already back that up a little bit at age 16 or 17 or 18? Way back in the day, even for us, I mean, my idol, Boris Becker, he won Wimbledon at age 17, 2 months before his 18th birthday. So, when you're all of a sudden 17 or 18, you're wondering like, okay, why am I not here playing quarters or semis of a slam yet? And so you had to sort of pace yourself. And again, you need that team around you, that structure around you that sort of supports you and helps you make the right decision. I mean, I got my first 3 ATP points in singles when I was 15 years old. So all of a sudden I look at the ATP ranking and I see myself at, I don't know what it was, maybe 900 in the world. And I go, I'm on the list. Let's go. Let's turn pro now. Like, I mean, what are we waiting for? And then sure enough, we played another satellite. And, after like the second or third week, I had to stop because I wasn't going to get enough circuit points. At the time, there were circuit points in order to get to ATP points. So we stopped. And, you could tell a lot of the times I was not even close enough of even getting games sometimes, because the guys that I was playing were just so more dominant, such more bigger men. So you had, so finally we went back to the academy and sort of went back to the drawing board and said, no, at age 16, we're not going to play too many junior tournaments. We'll play a few tournaments here or there, and trying to figure it out and not worry about, maybe being number one in the world in juniors, even though looking back, that would have been fun. I mean, I only played, I think, maybe 2 or 3 of the, Grand Slam junior tournaments, because it wasn't really my path, or it wasn't the path of Nick Bollettieri and my dad combined of what we were trying to accomplish. Our way was, what is going to be your best way, Tommy, to get and to be ready when you are 18, 19 to go on the tour. So like I said, even when we were 17, Greggy and I went over to Europe, had that practice session, about 10 days with Boris. Then we played junior tournaments throughout the summer, played a few challenges again towards the end of the year, always trying to get back and always trying to catch back up on school. And that's, another important point of like, what Greggy was just saying. If we had the possibility, even what we're doing right now, take out the iPad, log in, talk to your teachers and say, this is what I did today on the tennis court. Oh, how can we relate this towards math or physics and understanding the velocity of your serve, the angles, what did you do? How did you win the points? God, it would have been so amazing. It would have been fun on top of it, actually, to go back and sign up and having the opportunity to follow up on that. We didn't. It was for us, for Greggy and I, it was like, all right, are we really going to look at the pre-algebra, algebra books, geometry? You open up the books and you see numbers and square roots and you're like, how are we supposed to do this? Yeah, I don't know. And then you ask your coach and they were like, well, I did this 15 years ago. I have no idea how that works. So you're stuck, you're done, right? It's no longer actually on your mind, unfortunately, looking back, but it is what it is. So you had to go back and say, look, this is what we're here for. We're playing these junior tournaments. We're going to get ready for, the French Open, the Wimbledon. And so we did. And until we got back to the US, it was sort of like the next thing. And I even didn't make it to get my degree. I wish I would have been there, sort of like the hat and getting the degree for high school even. Like, I wanted to be there, but again, I was in Europe getting ready for some events. I played the qualifying in my hometown in Hamburg, Germany, which was one of the biggest tournaments, a tournament I looked up to always when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I went to it every year because I grew up just around the corner. And so I played my first qualifying event there. Lost in the second round of qualies. I went next week to Italy. I lost in the second round of qualies there, almost qualifying for the first time for a big event. But then all of a sudden, I get a wild card to my first ATP event into the main draw, just about a few weeks before the US Open. So it's my first ATP event. I get a wild card in Indianapolis. I arrive there. I'm thinking, wow, I get my credential. I'm waiting for the draw. I'm very nervous to see who I'm playing. And so I play my first round match against Dick Norman, a guy from Belgium who's about 6'7" and has a big lefty serve. And I'll never forget it. This was my first ATP match. I think every player that ever played tennis or is playing tennis will remember those moments, who you played your first match and who you're gonna, eventually play on your last match on the tour. So I played Dick Norman. I beat Dick Norman. I play Mark Woodford the next round, the lefty, another lefty, great doubles player, also pretty successful singles player, beat him. I play Renzo Forlan from Italy. And next thing you know, I'm in the quarterfinals playing on stadium court against Pete Sampras. And I go, can you believe this? Like, what a week. What a, getting my, I don't know how many ATP points I got at that time. I lost to Pete. He broke me once in each set, just like very easy, the way he goes through his matches, holding serve all the time, just finds the right time to attack and take you out. I remember that handshake. He kind of looked at me at almost like, welcome to the big league. And, that was very special. And sure enough, gave me the confidence, got in on my own ranking. I think I was ranked right away about 270, 280 at the time, got into the US Open qualifying, qualified at the US Open, playing against Michael Stick, another legend of German tennis, playing against him on the old grandstand court, rest in peace, grandstand court. It no longer exists. And played a great fourth set match against him. And I thought, like, okay, I'm in in sort of like the track, the railroads of, this is the way we're going to work our way up. And then you have yourself, you set yourself goals, trying to be top 100 by the end of the year in 96, trying to get into the top 50 the following year. So this is sort of like the goals that you set yourself. And then once, you sort of get to the top, or you get to the top 100, top 50, all of you guys that are, tuning in here, how important the ranking system is in tennis, is because this allows you to get into the main draw or play qualifying at the 250s or the challengers, depending on where you start. So the ranking system is very, very important, that you keep a good ranking so you can actually then plan a schedule of what tournaments you want to play. And sure enough, I think it took me about a year or so to get into the top 50. So when right after my 19th birthday, I was in the top 50, and now I could sort of plan my calendar of weeks where I'm going to play and go from there.
That's so, I mean, it's amazing, those journeys. And I think, we can kind of stay on. I want to get to a couple Q&A questions, because I think it's so fascinating for kids that don't see that, because on the surface, right. It's kind of the same in music or other sports. Best new artist. It's like, Tommy Haas was 2 in the world. He was always really good. Like, that just happened, but I think people here know the effort, the work, the dedication, the grind, the injuries, and Greg is someone who went to college, had those injuries, bouncing back. Just the whole sport in and of itself is just, it's such a grind. And I think it's important. I mean, imagine, it's funny thinking about that now. I mean, if you were a junior player, because you were at the academy, you had access. Imagine if you had stayed in Germany, hadn't been the academy, but, the thought of a Zoom to have, your idol, like a Becker or, a Jimmy Connors, actually get on a Zoom with you and answer questions, or, following like, one-handed backhand, how do you do this? So I think there's some questions that specific kids had to answer. I'll answer one that was here, how we as ICL Academy differed from other online schools that allow flexibility. I mean, I think, Tommy, you kind of answered that. We're the only school that brings in your passion. So, that has webinars like this with, we focus on individual passions and integrate leadership and character. I think having courses like sports psychology, which we talk about mental toughness, I think before people came on, we were showing you some of the classes and how they worked. And that's really, really, really critical. So anyone that's out there that's actually not enrolled in the school, but wants to find out more, you can go to admissions at iclacademy.org. It's funny too.
I don't want to interrupt, but I think you just brought up a very, very crucial point. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, is because, and Greggy can attest to that, I think, as well, because there are, I'd be lying if there weren't certain times where you felt overwhelmed and you felt like maybe I'm not practicing the right way, or maybe I'm not doing the work off the court, or maybe I'm not getting the education that I really want in case I don't make it as a professional tennis player. How do you coordinate everything? How do you pick your right coaches, that are going to be traveling with you? How do you trust somebody? You fall on your nose a lot of the times, and you have to learn that. And you had to, Greggy and I, we had to become sort of, adults at a very, very young age. We didn't have the tools. I told my parents I'm going to call them every morning at 11 a.m. Florida time on a payphone, 1-800-COLLECT. I'm calling my parents. They were waiting on the phone. Nowadays with all technology that you have, I mean, it's just a whole different world. But I guess the point that I was trying to make is that it's just so crucial to maybe then have also these classes that you are able to provide with ICL Academy. Talking about psychology, or maybe if you have a question and say, hey, how can I deal with this situation? I had a great opportunity to win this match, and I started thinking about what would happen if I win this round. I could play this person, and I've beaten him before, and that means I would almost get to the semifinals. And you think so much about a certain situation that all of a sudden you lose track of what's really important right here and then, and maybe you lose a little bit of that focus, and somehow you lost that match. And then you go, okay, how can I work on not looking too far ahead and always being in the presence? And then all of a sudden you have the platform right here to discuss it. For us, it was like, okay, who do I talk to about it now? Yeah, if you had a good coach, he might say, hey, listen, I saw you drifting off. I saw you already not as focused anymore when you were up that break in the second set. Why was that? Let's go back. Let's rewind. Let's rewind the tape and see what you could have done differently. Didn't really exist that much, right? We didn't look at tapes a lot. We didn't talk about it a lot. We just kind of said, okay, try to do it better next time. Go back to the practice court, work on your forehand, work on your serve, etc., etc. So having that platform to bring it all in and all together in one sort of online school wherever you are. I mean, I'm sorry, if that was available back in the day, it would have been. I mean, endless opportunities.
Focused around tennis is great, and that's why having you and Greg and even UTR. I mean, the ranking system, the partnerships that understand what the mindset of junior tennis is, because that's the big difference, right? I think that there's a lot of schools out there. There are a lot of online programs but they don't understand what it takes, what you're going through, the way you just described it. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. You're basically a professional. When you decide to train to be a professional, you essentially are. And then sometimes you're doing more sometimes than when you actually become that professional. I mean, your schedule is that much more intense to get there. We do have some of our students that have asked a couple of questions. One is, in your junior days, how did you translate good form and practice into matches? And I think we all know practice, and I obviously known you for so long, and there's a big difference between practice and matches. And your stories about Pete Sampras, even some of yours are amazing. But I'll let you take this one. We had a couple also that were, should I play doubles? I think you answered. I mean, you and Greg have played, and one-handed backhander too. Greggy has a great two-handed backhand. You have a great one-hander. Those are some of the ones that have come up.
Yeah, let's start with the first one. You're talking about practice, right? So I had to go there. But yeah, I mean, that's the situation. Again, for me, even if you were just practicing, again, we come always back to your 5-6 P's. Is the purpose of what are you trying to accomplish today on the practice court. Also, another very important P, practice. It is crucial that you take the practice sessions so seriously that you would almost feel like your life depends on it. Like it's almost like a match. So the transition then coming over to performing or trying to get that out of what you accomplish in practice into your matches, it just becomes second nature. if you're sort of, taking it a little bit careless, you're going out there and practicing and you're all good, the pressure is not really on. If you hit the targets, with the first 5 shots or not, nothing is really matter. You got to go out there and have the purpose of saying, okay, this is like, I'm going to play every point like it's similar to a match. How do you change up your practices where, you work on technique, you work on placement, but then you bring in a game where all of a sudden you're competing again and you're playing for something. So you try to translate that over right away into actually almost like a type of match play form, because that's what it really comes down to. I mean, you can practice all day long and be good in practice, but when it counts, that's what you're made of. Like when you're actually telling yourself, I have a break point, the guy's coming in on my backhand, now I can rely on my backhand down the line. I rely on my technique, I rely on my early preparation, I rely on my strength, if it is one of your strengths. If it's not one of your strengths, make it your strength. There shouldn't be a shot in the game that you don't feel comfortable, that you don't have, right? I mean, that's where you got to try to get yourself to, so that you have an answer for everything that's coming your way, but just to be prepared and ready. And then you got to I don't know, I think there's got to be a way where you can practice these types of situations where you are you're thriving on the fact that now all of a sudden you gotta win this point to either win the match or to stay in it, and you gotta then be ready for that, and you gotta get a feeling of, oh yes, it's right there where I want it. It's almost like a Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant would say, give me the ball, this is crunch time. Instead of thinking ooh, it's 4 all, 30 all, and I'm serving and I need to hold my serve here, otherwise my opponent is serving for the first set. It's almost like at 4 all, 30 all, what you're thinking is, now the match starts. Let's see what this guy's made of. This is it, because I'm going to rely on my strengths and I'm going to hold serve and then I'm going to break him. But that's the mindset. That's the way you got to think, thriving on these moments. I mean, I know Greggy and I, even when we play today, we still compete out there like crazy and we're trying to run around like we used to 15 years ago. But we always get ourselves, and if it's just an 11-point game, it doesn't matter. We want to be right there at 8 all, 9 all, and then it actually becomes interesting. Is Greggy gonna come and run around his back and bring his big forehand? Am I gonna be able to put the ball in the right positions? That's what makes fun. That's what's fun, and that's what you ultimately want to do.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, it's such a good point. Greg, anything to add on that, and some of your.
Yeah, let's talk about the doubles. I think doubles is only as valuable as how you treat it. If you go out there and just go through the motions, it's not really worth it. But I think doubles, if you really put the effort in, can prepare you, can help you with your hand skills, can prepare you for the big points. There's a lot you can learn from doubles. Doubles can make you feel really uncomfortable really quickly. You can get down 30-love in a game, and in singles, you can kind of fight your way back. But in doubles, I mean, everything happens really quickly. So I think doubles actually helps my singles game. I can do things today because I played a lot of doubles with Tommy. I can come in, I can half volley, I can put something in the corner that other guys are have these weird grips, these big Western grips. And I know that in doubles, that doesn't work. The ball's coming too quick. They're hitting sliders into your body. I mean, imagine playing the Bryans. If you have a little bit of an issue with your return, they will exploit it, right? Mm-hmm. So in singles, you can back up to the back fence and take a big swing and fight in the point. But in doubles, it's interesting. You can't. There's nowhere to hide. Your weaknesses show up really quick in doubles, in my opinion. And so I personally didn't like doubles that much. Just people think I was doubles a lot. I just like playing with Tommy, just to be honest. We just got along so well. It was so much fun. And to be honest, I think we played doubles a lot of times to show each other how great we were. Who could do something better. Like it was fun. It was oh, look how great I am. Look how great my return is. It was a lot of fun. But to go back to what Tommy said, I think practice needs to be high intensity, even if it's for just an hour. If it could be a 2-hour practice and you're just going through the motions, you're not preparing yourself for the tournament. Tommy is completely correct. You need to find someone that challenges you, someone that makes you feel uncomfortable, someone that exposes you, makes you vulnerable. If you don't hit the slice perfectly in the corner, he passes you. If you're not competing against those guys or those ladies or whoever you're competing against, competitors, you're not getting better and you're not ready for competition. So for me, I had some humble pie every day, and so did Tommy. We would play academy tournaments, and people like Hisham Arazi would show up, and they would come in and compete against us at age 14 or 15 and just beat us to death, right? But then they come around next year and we get a little better, a little closer. So I think you need to be willing to lose and take the losses and get over them real quick and challenge yourself to do better the next time. When the lights go on, it's very different. I think if you do that, you can summon your talent at will. I was talking with Tommy about that recently. Like, I feel like we're prepared that if any moment you say go play, we can play at a high level. We really don't need to think about it, and we can summon that talent when we need to. And that's from just training really hard in practice and executing in the matches. And I will say this, Tommy, I love you, but I want to correct you on this. Even though it was only doubles, your first ATP match, main draw you ever played, was with me in March of 1996, which is the bottom picture that is shown on the.
That is very correct. Yes, I'll take. That's my mistake.
So I get that check mark for
Yeah.
first match ever.
No, absolutely. And you get the check mark also. I think on saying exactly the right things. Is doubles is actually, looking back, is such an important part of your game. I think where you can really actually practice and exploit how to return, right? Taking the ball early, attacking it, sort of coming in. You have somebody on the other side. The quick hands at the net, poaching, your volleys are exploited much more than in singles. If you don't like to come to the net that often, in singles you can get away with it. In doubles, you at some point have to be at the net. If your partner is serving you at the net, if you want to throw in some serve and volleys, you got to get to the net half volley. So I think it's actually something that has also helped me through the years, playing a lot of doubles in juniors, especially on Greggy's side, having quite a lot of success in juniors for sure, has definitely helped me also get ready for my singles for sure.
It's great. I mean, we can go on. We're kind of over the time, but obviously we can talk tennis for probably days and days. If there are any last questions, feel free to type them in. We're answering here. This is the first of a series. I think Tommy's very willing and open to share. I think, Greg, we have a lot more to cover. I mean, it goes by pretty fast when I don't even know how many.
We do a lot. And like you said, we're happy to get on here again at some point, when you guys have more questions for sure. But I think one really important thing is also, asking you the question, Kirk, is really, how do you differentiate yourself, with your online school compared to others? What makes you, better, which, I've seen it, you've shown it to me. And that's why Greggy and I, who have seen it as well, are happy to be on this call, because it just, when you can also compare certain things and learn certain things, like strategically, where you can sort of compare it to your tennis game, you're automatically much more interested than when you kind of really starting to feel like, okay, I am sort of like in a school environment, and I'm starting to sort of lose interest after 5 minutes because I'm lost. But if you sort of keep it like in your passion, which is maybe tennis in this case, of course, but maybe even other sports or music, and you bring the educational side now to your sport that you're absolutely in love with, and you feel like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I'm learning math through tennis, or the physics, and using the certain angles. I mean, why don't you explain to everybody that's listening of why your school, your ICL Academy is the one to be on?
Well, that's really that's our mission, and obviously, as you said in the beginning, you've known my family for a long time, and we're so proud to be stewards of Dwight. And really, that philosophy of igniting the spark of genius in every child is for real. It's finding that passion within. And what's now with technology, again, none of us had that when we were growing up. We're all the same age. I mean, it would have been great if we did, but even today, there really still isn't anything for that tennis player like that understands that mindset. So that's the goal here. And we've been fortunate enough to, be able to create a system and a process which understands, when tournaments are. I always felt that it was so frustrating, in a regular school, not even the academy, because remember, you two went to the closest thing. I mean, your school was a tennis school. It was the closest there was in the world to that. You go to a normal school where they don't care that you're a tennis player at all. Your exams, you had to go play Orange Bowl Well, your exams finished on a Friday morning and you may have had your first match at the Orange Bowl or Nationals the next day. How crazy is that when you're trying to peak for a tournament and you have your exams right during that time? It was crazy. So we really felt that by focusing, ICL Academy tennis, that we would be able to not only integrate into the classroom, understand the schedule, and really be in that mindset of a player and applying it. I mean, how great the lessons you can learn from Shakespeare are huge. The lessons you can learn from Arthur Ashe's biography, Days of Grace, or Andre's Open, you relate it. And I think you just hit it on the head. I mean, making it relatable with being the first school to ever really focus on that passion and have real teachers that care. The mantra of respect tradition, embrace tomorrow. I mean, we can talk for days about Michael Stiek and Becker, and this generation looks to you and Roger and Rafa, and sort of that respect tradition, embrace tomorrow is what ICL is all about. It's, great education is about teachers that care about you. And that's the respect tradition part. We're so fortunate to have a great education system, the foundation with Dwight, with teachers, with ICL, and ICL believing in the importance not just of your results on the court, but you as a human being, the character element. And Greg and I talk about all the time, how can you apply things to business that if you don't become the best tennis player, but what can you apply? And applying that discipline, everything you just said about practice applies into business as well, no matter what you go into. So those lessons, had someone told you that, like there was a way that Greg was able to make that transition in his competitive nature, but had he had the actual courses that said, this is the business of sport. If someone had said to you, Tommy, this is how the money side, the economics, the industry of tennis works, you can then apply it more and more and more. So I think knowing what we do now and being able to give back is really our goal. So I'm really excited to do that. I know we are over. There's some of the last questions, and we'll kind of wrap up. It's impressive. Well, one was a specific one to me about what curriculum we follow and how the universities see us. Again, we have an amazing process and relationship to all of the college coaches, to universities. As you mentioned before, the background in the back end of the Dwight schools are world renowned. We offer all of the top courses. All of our courses are NCAA approved. They're all made to follow an understanding by design, which is really can be related to tennis as well, but it's understand the basic concepts, then apply it to your passion, but then mastery is making it yours. How do I relate something? How do I explain it? And that's the basis of our curriculum model, the understanding by design. And then there's also a question about staying motivated in your toughest moments. That's a great question. I mean, mental toughness is a pretty big part of the game right there. So do you want to kind of end on that, on the mental toughness side?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, all of you guys that are playing this game, I mean, it's going to drive you absolutely insane at times. And, I think it is in my book, it is one of the toughest sports out there because it brings in so many different elements, right? I mean, along the surfaces, you can play on hard court, on clay. Maybe you played all your life on hard court, and now you go into Europe and you're playing on clay. Now you're playing on red clay. I've never played on red clay before. Oh no, you're playing on grass now because you're getting ready for the grass court season. I've never played on grass. I don't even have grass court shoes. The elements, the sun, what time do I play? You find out a day before at 10 p.m. You're playing first match at 9 a.m. Great. I can't sleep. Now, there's so many things that you already have to deal with before you're even on the court. So again, having sort of like the peaceful mind of like, I'm doing my work. I'm prepared. I practice the right way. Like Greggy mentioned earlier, instead of practicing 4 hours, practice 2 hours, but with a commitment of really working on what you need to work on. Have a great team around you. Trust your team. Trust the process. And then when you go out there, always remember, and I made that mistake for a long time. I always was trying to be perfect out there. I don't know why. I could play an unbelievable flawless match and something all of a sudden would bother me. And I would let it bother me for not 1 point or 2 points, but sometimes 2 or 3 games. And sometimes I could find a way to find my focus again and win those matches because of pure talent. And sometimes I couldn't. And again, you're so mentally staying tough, understanding the fact that nothing is going to always go flawless, but really only one thing that you have to worry about is when you go out there, just be better than your opponent. Do everything that you can to be better than your opponent and win the last point. I mean, it's really that simple.
That's a great thing. Greg, any last kind of any last thoughts? And I will say, anyone that has any questions for me or about the school, please write me at Kirk, K-I-R-K, at ICLacademy.org, or admissions@ICLacademy.org. You know, it's really great. And you've got some nice comments. David's back. We're wrapping up. We have Greg. Any last words? Any piano behind you? Do you want to take us out with some theme music? No.
That would be nice. And nobody's gonna leave then. Nobody's gonna leave.
No, exactly. We start getting them on it. But really, Greg, any final words?
Ultimately, I think what Tommy said is right. I think really, if you really want it more than your opponent, I think you have a good chance of winning. It's just the balls seem to go in when you want it more than your opponent. That's what competing is all about. But also competing with the right mindset, the right heart, like doing it the right way. You know, because at the end of the day, we're human beings, and just trying to find that balance is really important. But education and continued education is extremely important. It's just as important as your athletics, because you're going to have to buy a home one day or manage money or family, and the balance in life starts with education. So I really feel like ICL is a good route and a great route. And I wish I would have had it. But the sooner you can get on the right track, the better. Because no matter how well you do in sports, you've heard all those sports horror stories, right? About not having the right background. So I feel like the earlier you can start, because you end up going to be a student athlete, you're going to be an athlete, a professional athlete, or you may end up being a corporate athlete one day. But at the end of the day, education and sports, the sport mindset are going to be combined. And this is what ICL is all about.
I appreciate that. No, you hit it on the head. And I think we've had interesting discussions about also, well, I'm going to make it, and what I try to tell people is, yes, even if you become number one in the world, having the education and having the understanding gives you even more of an advantage. So it was always like an excuse, like, well, I'll just make it so big, I don't have to worry about money or finances. No, you actually do have to have that mindset. So I hope everyone does make it, and being prepared, and that idea of the corporate athlete, the athlete, the student, but the character is so important. And having that 6 P's and that passion and purpose, no matter what, and wherever you end up, just focus and work hard. So thank you guys so much again for joining us. Really appreciate it. I think it'll be the first, hopefully, of many. I look forward to seeing you. And again, any questions or comments, we have admissions@ICLacademy.org or Kirk@ICLacademy.org. So thanks again, Tommy. You want to leave us with good? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Take care, guys. Ciao.